The wind came hard off the range that morning, sweeping the snow sideways like the breath of something that didn't care who lived or died. It scoured the flat land, bent the tall grass to breaking, and numbed whatever skin it touched. Her boots were soaked through, cracked along the edges, soles worn to near nothing. She'd stopped feeling her toes sometime around dawn. Ahead of her the horizon was flat and endless, the road little more than a pale scar through frozen scrub. The sky was the color of old tin. Her dress clung wet to her legs, and her coat was too thin for this kind of cold. It hung open in places where the stitching had long since given up. Snow clung to her lashes. One of the children was crying, thin and breathless, in the sling she'd made from what was left of their bedding. The others stumbled behind her, three small figures in mismatched layers, their noses red, hands clenched to their middles. She had not spoken since the morning before. Words took energy. So did hope. The cabin had been boarded up when they got there. No one had come. The letter had promised work shelter, at least a barn, if nothing else. Her husband had written it from this very place. She had clutched that page like scripture, but there'd been nothing. No man, no fire, no sign he'd ever arrived. Now there was just the prairie and the ache in her body and the burn of wind that made her eyes leak. The last of the cornbread had gone to the children 2 days before. She'd eaten snow yesterday just to keep her mouth wet. Her milk had dried up. The baby hadn't fed properly in hours. She could feel him growing lighter in the sling, his cries coming fewer and weaker. A fence line appeared in the distance, posts buried in drifts. She didn't believe in salvation, not anymore, but she followed it, her feet moved by memory. Step dragged step. She was no longer walking, she was falling forward over and over, refusing to stop. Her legs trembled. The little one behind her coughed so hard she stumbled, but the girl caught her arm and righted her, whispering something soft and cracked, like a prayer. Then smoke. It was faint, a blur against the wind, a gray thread rising from behind a stand of juniper, maybe a half-mile off the road. The sight of it made her heart jump in her chest. Or maybe it was just the cold doing things to her. She turned toward it, changing course. The baby whimpered. The wind keened through the trees. She tried to walk faster, but her body wouldn't allow it. The children were no longer crying. They moved like ghosts behind her. Their cheeks were colorless now, their eyes hollow. The cabin came into view suddenly, as if it had grown up from the ground. Low, square roof, pitched steep to keep the snow off. A curl of wood smoke from the chimney. No movement. No dogs. She reached the door and knocked, weakly at first, then again with the last of her strength. Nothing. She sagged forward, her forehead against the wood. The baby had gone still in the sling. Her knees gave. She slid down the door and sat in the snow, the weight of 4 children pressing around her like a grave. She didn't have another step left. And then the door opened. It swung outward fast, like someone had been watching. He was tall, broad in the shoulders, eyes dark, narrowed against the wind. His coat hung open and his hands were bare, as if he'd come in a hurry. For a second neither of them moved. Then he crouched. "You got no business out in this," he said, voice low-edged with disbelief. She tried to answer, but her lips wouldn't work. Her throat felt packed with wool. He looked at the children, then back at her. Something in his face changed, not pity, not alarm, but a hard, quiet resolve. "Come on." He scooped up the smallest girl first, then the second. She watched him gather them in his arms like they were not heavy at all. Then he leaned down to take the third. Her arms tightened instinctively around the baby. She still had that much strength. She wouldn't let him go. "I'll carry him," she whispered. He nodded once. She stood somehow. He moved aside, holding the door wide. Inside it was warm, so warm it hurt. Her skin stung as the heat reached it. Her knees buckled again. But this time there was wood beneath her, not snow. The air smelled like pine and smoke and something cooking. And for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, she let her eyes close. She didn't sleep, not really. Her body shut down, but her mind kept twitching, half waiting for something to go wrong. When she came to the light through the cabin windows was dim and gold low afternoon. Her hands were still curled around the baby, who had begun to stir with small bird-like movement. The sling was gone, replaced with a rough but clean wool blanket. She didn't remember that. Across the room the children were laid out near the hearth, each tucked in with quilts. Someone had taken their shoes off. Their feet were pink again. The little girl's cough was quieter now. He sat at the table, coat off, sleeves rolled. A half-sliced onion rested under one hand, a knife in the other. His face was lined and quiet, beard grizzled, not full. He looked up when he felt her watching. "You're awake," he said, voice like gravel breaking under wagon wheels. She nodded slowly. Her throat was still raw, but less so. "Water's by the stove," he added, pointing with the knife. "There's food when you're ready." The silence between them felt too big to cross. She didn't move, just stared. Finally she whispered, "This your place?" He gave a single nod. I thought maybe no one lived out this far. Most don't. You alone." "Most days." She looked down at her baby. He'd started to nurse, weak but steady. The relief nearly broke her. She bit the inside of her cheek until it bled, just to keep from crying in front of a man she didn't know. "Your man send you here?" he asked after a long pause. She met his eyes. "Said he was working north of here, near Black Creek. He wrote, told me to come, that he'd built us a place. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to." She saw it in his face, that knowledge. How men sometimes left their names behind and didn't look back. How letters were easier to write than a fire was to keep. "How long you been walking?" 3 days, she said. "You got lucky." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Did we?" The room filled with quiet again, except for the low crackle of the fire. He stood, rinsed the knife in a basin, and wiped his hands on a cloth. "You'll stay," he said. "We can't pay you." "I didn't ask." That sat between them a long while. She looked over at the children. The boy had curled toward the warmth, mouth slack in sleep. The smallest girl clutched the edge of the quilt with one fist, her face calm for the first time in days. "You can't keep us," she said softly. "I'm not. Just keeping you alive." He didn't wait for a reply. He crossed the room, knelt by the stove, stirred something in a pot. The smell of potatoes and meat filled the space. She watched him. The steadiness in his hands. The way he didn't rush. He moved like a man used to being alone, like no one had asked anything of him in a long time. She shifted and winced. Her knees had started to ache now that feeling was returning. "You got a name?" he asked without turning. "Clara." "I'm Eli." The baby finished and drifted off again. She adjusted him in her arms, tucked the blanket tighter. Eli ladled stew into a bowl, set it down beside her. No gesture, no words. Just placed it where she could reach it, then went back to slicing more vegetables. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the spoon. The heat of the bowl stung, but she didn't care. She ate slow at first, then faster. The salt and warmth moved through her like breath. She finished without speaking. When she set the bowl down, she saw he'd been watching. "More?" he asked. "No. Thank you." "You can wash up there," he said, gesturing to a tin basin by the door. "Quilts are clean. Take that cot." He had pulled one from against the far wall and set it near the stove. Another sat across the room, half hidden behind a wooden partition. His, she guessed. Clara hesitated. Her voice came low. "You sure?" He nodded. Kids need the heat. You too. She moved slow, her limbs heavy and sore. But she managed to lift the baby and cross the room. She laid him down, then one by one helped the others to the cot. They stirred but didn't wake. She stood for a moment, unsure what to do with her hands. Get some rest, Ailey said without looking at her. Clara sat on the edge of the cot. She glanced at the window. Snow still came down, but gentler now. What happens when the storm breaks? She asked. We'll figure that out. His voice was even final. Clara lay down. The baby shifted against her. One of the girls reached for her hand in her sleep. She let her fingers rest there lightly. For the first time in weeks, the night held more than just fear. Subscribe and let the frontier unfold slowly. The storm lingered for 3 days. Wind beat the roof like fists. Snow buried the fence posts, then the water pump, then most of the chicken coop out back. Eli kept the fire burning hot and steady. He brought in wood with a rhythm that spoke of years doing the same. Quiet, methodical. When he wasn't tending the fire, he was fixing things, tightening hinges, mending a boot, cleaning his tools with oil and cloth like they were holy. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. Clara moved through the cabin like a woman trying not to leave footprints. She watched. She listened. She kept to the children. The baby gained strength fast. The others found their voices again. After the second night, Clara caught the boy James asking Eli a question about the woodpile. Eli answered without turning around, and just like that, the boy started following him around like a shadow. By the fourth morning, the wind gave up. The world outside fell into that heavy, soundless stillness that only comes after snow. Clara stepped outside. She didn't go far, just to the porch, wrapped in Ellie's second coat, which hung big on her, the sleeves nearly to her knuckles. Her breath steamed the air. The horizon had disappeared under a blanket of white. Trees bowed under the weight. Even the sky seemed soft, like someone had wrung all the sharpness out of it. She stood there a long while. The cold felt honest on her skin, like it had nothing to hide. Eli came out behind her, set a steaming tin cup on the rail. Chicory, he said. She picked it up with both hands. The warmth soaked through her fingers. She sipped. It was bitter but solid, the kind of taste you could stand on. He leaned against the post, arms crossed, gaze on the fields beyond. You stay out too long, it bites, he said. She nodded, then surprised herself by speaking. It's better than inside. When it's too quiet, my head runs. You hear thing? No. I remember. He didn't ask what. Just let it hang there. She glanced sideways. You always been alone out here? Not always. She waited. He didn't go on. Wife, she asked. He gave a small nod. Ruth? Died 6 winters back. Fever took her fast. I'm sorry. Me too. Silence settled between them again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like 2 people standing in the same storm, just not saying it out loud. He shifted his weight, then said she couldn't have children. We tried. Lost 3. After that, we stopped talking about it. Clara lowered her cup. That kind of quiet, it takes something out of you. Leaves something too. She turned to face him. Why'd you open the door? He looked at her then. Long and steady. Didn't see any reason not to. That's not the same. No, it's not. She wanted to ask if he had regrets, if he'd done it out of kindness or pity or some deeper kind of loneliness. But she didn't. She just nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. He pushed off the post. I'll get the sled. Bring in what's left of your things. We don't have much. Still. He walked back inside. Clara stayed a moment longer, watching the sky. Her breath made small clouds in the still air. For the first time in days, the quiet in her head wasn't full of ghosts. When she went back and the children were laughing, Eli was helping James into an old pair of boots. The sight of it cracked something in her chest. Not pain. Not quite. Just the sharp edge of something she hadn't let herself feel. She stepped out of her shoes and set the cup down. "Let me help," she said. Eli looked up, nodded. Grabbed the rope from the wall. The work was hard. They dug through drifts to reach the wagon. Most of the blankets were wet. The small trunk she'd brought was frozen shut. Inside were only clothes, a Bible, and the letter her husband had written, still folded, still lying. She left the letter in the trunk. That night they ate around the fire. Real food. Eli had found a salted ham and boiled it with beans and onions. The air smelled rich, like something you could remember your whole life if you wanted. After the children fell asleep, Clara stayed near the fire, her hands cupped around another tin of chicory. Eli sat across from her, whittling something, a spoon maybe, or just a stick with too much time in it. She watched him in the firelight. The way the shadows moved across his face. He had the look of someone who'd been carved out of the same land he lived on. "Why'd you stay here after she died?" she asked. He didn't look up. "Where would I go? Back east? Someplace easier." He shook his head. "Too many people back east. Here the land don't lie. It just is. You live or you don't. Nobody pretends otherwise." Clara looked into the fire. "I think I'd like that." He glanced at her. "You can stay. For now. Till you're ready. I don't know what ready looks like anymore. Then stay till you figure it out." She let the silence hold them. Outside, snow fell soft against the roof. Inside, the fire cracked, and for the first time in a long while the night didn't feel like something to survive. By late February, the snow had begun to melt in streaks running off the eaves in slow, steady drops. The days stretched a little longer, light lasting past supper, though the wind still came cold from the north. The land was waking, but not fast. Nothing out here woke fast. Clara had taken to splitting kindling in the mornings before the children rose. Her hands blistered the first week, but she didn't complain. She liked the weight of the axe, the clean crack of wood giving way. It was honest work, and it didn't ask questions. Eli never told her what to do. He just made room, left space for her to find the shape of herself again. Sometimes she followed him out to the barn, helped feed the horses, patch the fence. She asked about the tools, the land, what grew where. He answered her without ceremony, like he was teaching her how to breathe in a place she'd never known. She was learning how to layer her clothes, how to move through snow without sinking too deep, how to listen for the shift in the wind that meant another storm was building. The children helped too. James followed Eli like a pup, asking questions, mimicking his movements. The girls clung to Clara at first, but soon they wandered, drawn to the animals, the trees, the world outside the cabin walls. They laughed again. That sound came back first. One morning, Clara found Eli on the porch, sitting with a notebook in his lap. He closed it when he saw her. "You write?" she asked, wiping her hands on her skirt. "Sometimes." "What about her?" He gave a shrug. "Thoughts. Weather. Old things. You ever write about now?" His mouth curved slightly. "Maybe." She stepped closer. "You ever think about leaving?" "I did once. After Ruth died. Thought about heading down into Texas. Maybe finding work on a trail crew." "What stopped you?" He looked out over the field. "Woke up one morning and realized the only thing waiting for me down there was more dust and no name. At least here I knew what I'd lost." Clara stood beside him. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and ash. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and all this'll be gone," she said. "Like none of it stuck. Like I dreamed it. It stuck." "How do you know?" Because you're still here. She looked at him then. There was something steady in his eyes. Not soft, not sweet, but sure. Like a fence post sunk deep in hard ground. They didn't touch. Didn't need to. The moment passed like weather, quiet and real. That afternoon the wagon came. A single rider, dust rising behind the wheels, a shape too familiar for Clara to mistake. She saw him before Eli did. Her body went still, heart lodged tight behind her ribs. The man pulled up outside the fence, squinting toward the cabin. He was leaner than she remembered, hat-low jacket, stiff with wear. Eli stepped out behind her, brow furrowed. "Friend of yours?" Clara didn't answer. The rider dismounted, slow. He tied the reins loosely like he wasn't sure he'd be staying long. Then he walked toward them, boots crunching on half-frozen mud. He stopped just shy of the porch. Clara. She felt the children watching from the window behind her. Matthew. He looked past her to Eli, then back again. "Heard you came looking. Took me longer than I thought to get back." Eli stayed quiet. Clara stepped forward, arms folded against the wind. "You said there'd be a house," she said flatly. "There was. Wow. It got complicated. You left us." He had the sense to look down. "I had to take work in the hills. Wages were better. I sent word." "You sent a lie." Matthew looked at Eli again, uneasy. "You staying here now?" "I'm keeping my children warm." He shifted. "I didn't think you'd actually come. You said you built a home." "I meant to." The silence between them stretched until it snapped. Eli stepped forward, slow and calm. "You come to take her back?" Matthew straightened. "She's my wife. She's the mother of 4 who nearly died getting here." Matthew bristled. "I didn't ask you." Ellie didn't move. "You left her. You don't get to pretend different now." Clara's voice cut through them both. "Stop." They turned. She stepped down from the porch past Ellie until she stood alone between the two men. "I didn't come for a fight," she said. "I came for a future." "You weren't in it, Matthew." "I can fix it." "No, you can't." He stared at her, stunned. "I loved you once," she said, voice steady. "But love doesn't survive in silence. It doesn't survive in empty cabins and broken promises." He swallowed, looked down. I thought maybe we could start again." Clara's voice softened. "I've already started." He nodded slowly, turned without another word, and mounted his horse. He didn't look back. When the sound of hooves faded, Clara turned to Eli. He met her eyes, said nothing. She walked past him into the cabin. The children looked up at her wide-eyed. She bent down, pulled them close, held them long and quiet. That night when the fire burned low, she stepped outside. The moon hung pale above the trees. She heard Eli follow his boots slow on the wood. She didn't turn, just said, "You were right. I am still here." He stood beside her. "Maybe that's enough," she said. "For now." She nodded. The wind was soft. The door behind them stayed open. The thaw came hard all at once. Ice cracked and gave way beneath the trees. Streams surged where there'd been none the week before. Mud swallowed the lower paths, and every boot sank half-deep in it. Life came back quick, impatient after its long sleep. Clara rose with the sun most mornings. Not because she had to, but because it felt right. She started bread before the children stirred, swept ash from the stove, fed the chickens. Her shoulders didn't ache like they used to. Her fingers no longer trembled with every small task. Eli had built a fence extension with James helping. The girls had taken to carrying water and gathering eggs. They made a life in pieces, not spoken of out loud, just done in the rhythm of their days. Clara kept waiting for fear to return, waiting to wake in the dark, panicked, half dreaming of Matthew's voice, or the empty road, but it didn't come. Some nights she slept straight through. Others she would lie awake just listening to the stove ticking, to Eli moving quietly in the other room, to her children breathing in their sleep. One evening she found herself standing behind the cabin watching the sun sink over the pasture. The light turned everything gold, even the old plow left rusting near the barn. Eli came to stand beside her. "You think about leaving?" he asked. She hesitated. "I used to. Every day. And now?" Clara bent to pick up a smooth stone near her foot, rolled it in her palm. "Now I think about planting." Eli didn't smile, but something in his face eased. "I cleared the north lot," he said. "Soil's better there." She looked at him and for the first time let herself really see him, weathered, steady, a man shaped more by silence than words. His shirt was damp at the collar from work. His hands were still stained with earth. "I'd like to try corn," she said. "You'll need seed." "I'll trade the quilt." He nodded. "Good trade." They stood in silence as the sun disappeared. By April the children were running through grass. The baby, now crawling, followed them like a dog on all fours, dragging a torn rag behind him like it mattered. He had fat in his cheeks again, laughed easily. Clara dug rows into the earth behind the cabin. She worked slow, steady, her hands rough and sure. The ground was cool and damp beneath her fingers. She didn't wear gloves anymore. Eli watched her one afternoon from the porch. "You sure about corn?" "Why, you don't believe in it?" "I believe in you. I just know how hard the first season is." She looked up. Her face was dirty hair pulled back with a strip of cloth. "I've done harder." He came down the steps, crouched beside her, took the seed bag from her lap. Together they planted 2 rows in silence. Just the brush of fingers against dirt, the press of seed into earth. A rhythm older than language. After she leaned back, hands on her knees. "You ever think you'd have this again? This someone beside you? A field growing?" He wiped his hands on his pants. "Didn't think about much for a long while." She looked at him. "And now? I think I want you to stay." Her breath caught. "I'm not asking for a promise," he said. "Not yet. I just want you to know you're not passing through." Clara reached across the dirt and took his hand. It was quiet, but it was everything. Summer came with dust and heat and the sweet hum of bees in the tall grass. The corn rose slow, then quick green, shooting toward the sky like it had waited for years to live. They added a table to the porch. Most evenings were spent there, eating, talking, sometimes saying nothing at all. The girls braided flowers into each other's hair. James carved a slingshot from a branch. The baby took his first steps barefoot in the dust. Clara sat one night with Eli's arm around her shoulders, the baby curled asleep in her lap. The horizon glowed with the last of the sun. The fields, though still small, stood proud and alive. She turned to him. "You ever miss what came before?" He shook his head slowly. "What's here now is what I was waiting for. I just didn't know it." Clara closed her eyes. The wind stirred the grass. Somewhere an owl called out low and sure. Inside, on a small shelf, the Bible sat beside a jar of seed and a wooden spoon James had carved. Nothing fancy, nothing written in stone. Just proof that life had come back. In the dark, Eli took her hand. She squeezed it once. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered. "Good," he said. "Neither am I." The porch light flickered behind them. The house stood solid, its walls holding warmth. Inside, the children slept. Outside, the corn grew. Subscribe and don't let the silence win.